The views expressed in the following show are of the host, the guest, and the callers. The content of the following show, its accuracy, authenticity, and the ramifications of the use or application of said content is the responsibility of those speaking and listening, not the broadcast medium.
All right, here we are. We are back, and we are live. And as we are talking about what is going on with Cary-Andrew Crittenden, he is. I have some things that have been written about him. A devoted American who has made it his cause to expose unethical judges and government which prey on seniors and the mentally disabled. You know, that's going to get him in the same type of boat as people like Janet Phelan, you know, for doing these right things. I have a lot of stuff that's on the webpage that goes into what work is being done. There are similar cases to what's going on with him, and I'm just going to let Cary-Andrew actually walk us through because he can do it best. What's the start on this, Cary-Andrew, and what terrible, incredible thing have you done to have this, to have the powers that be come after you?
I filed a whistleblower complaint.
There you go. See, you got to be one of those people who file a complaint on people who are doing wrong when they should be doing right. Anyway, go ahead.
Anyway, so the complaint was regarding an attorney by the name of Larry Kubo, who is a county council attorney, and was a Santa Clara County council. And what Larry Kubo did was he facilitated what was the fraudulent eviction of a woman who was on a conservatorship. She was in the HUD subsidized apartment complex in Santa Clara County, not the city, but the county of Santa Clara, the city of San Jose, a place called Markham Plaza Apartments, which is on Monterey Road, operated by EAH Housing. And I've been involved for over 20 years in social justice activism, fair and affordable housing, legal reform, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's civic engagement. That's what should be encouraged. That they should be encouraging the community to be involved in these type of things. I mean, it's supposed to be our government, right? And we're supposed to be able to take a part in it. And what Larry Kubo did was there was not a whistleblower. I'm sorry, it was a code enforcement complaint that was filed as far as some health and safety issues on the apartment complex, and that was 10 days. Yeah, well, it was 10 or 11 days before the eviction notice was received. And that granted the tenant who was on a conservatorship legal protections as far as the Fair Employment and Housing Act. So she was disabled, and pursuant to the Americans with Disabilities Act, she asked me to give her some help. I was helping a lot of the different residents there with different things with the management and this tenant rights activist, and that's a federally protected right. Pursuant to Title 42, 36, 31 of the U.S. Code, and nobody can be retaliated against or having an advocate to help with their rights. So she filed an answer to unlawful detainer with my help through ADA, submitted to the court. And Larry Kubo was assigned through the public guardian's office to be her attorney, helping her with the eviction. And they tried to say that they couldn't retaliate against her for having a tenant rights activist helper or ADA advocate. So they manipulated the records to try to say that I was residing there, even though it's a clear and established fact that I've been residing in Palo Alto for 8 years or so. And but they wouldn't let me use my real name. They put a different name, similar name, but a different name on the paperwork to give them a little bit of, wiggle room or whatever. I don't know the right word for it. So Larry Kubo took the answer to unlawful detainer and he rewrote it basically and overwrote it, stripping out her protections that she had through the Fair Employment and Housing Act. And the original one had said that she filed this complaint, and then it was retaliatory for filing the complaint, and he'd overwritten it to where all her protections were taken out, and basically made it almost appear like he was really trying to defend her, but more, instead of addressing the issues in the original complaint as if they were, instead of addressing them as they were, which were lies, he responded to them almost as if they were truthful, and he's trying to fight fight against truthful accusations or something, and almost like he was mirroring what they're doing, which is a tactic. I hadn't been that involved in litigation before, so I didn't have the keen eye for this kind of thing. The eviction ended up going through a bunch of the people from the apartment complex who were working with the management there. One of the guys was actually a lot of people, but they all wrote up crafted statements that they made. None of them would sign the statements, and none of the pleadings, I guess they call them, were allowed to be cross-examined at all. Almost one of them almost was by the lawyer. His name was Ryan Maybury with the law office of Todd Rothbard. He actually manipulated some documents, and I was going to go in and cross-examine him on how he'd edited and altered documents. I'd written a note on behalf of the tenant to the management, basically saying, I want to avoid a confrontation. The harassment that you're doing against her is really intense. It doesn't need to escalate. Can we please talk about this? I didn't want them to get swept up into the middle of a firestorm that they're in the middle of now, and it wasn't necessary. And I didn't see why it would be so difficult or out of the question to try to talk to them and suggest a non-confrontational way to go about this. There's no need for them to get violent or threaten people or harass people. It's just, I mean, the tenants there were living in a state of fear pretty much all the time, and they have a right to advocacy. And the paper was submitted. They'd said that threats were made, and they didn't show any of that. All they did was show the note that I'd submitted asking for the harassment to stop, and I tried to cross-examine the lawyer on that, and the judge in the civil court case, his name is Socrates Peter Manukian. You can Google him. He's Department 19, a civil court judge. And as soon as I tried to cross-examine him on how the documents were edited, he intervened and interrupted all of a sudden. So you're trying to say that you didn't write that? Well, I wrote the note. But that doesn't mean that I applied anything or what. And then he shifted into another, started talking about other case law and stuff and remember exactly what he said. But then he said, case closed, and nodded his head at the attorney, and the attorney made some sort of a signal, and everyone just booked out of the courtroom. Oh, what the hell happened? I thought I was supposed to cross-examine the people in the courtroom, and I was supposed to be allowed to do that, and everything was false. I mean, there was even some documents that were submitted. One particular complaint was supposedly from some resident there who the person I was advocating for even tried to subpoena to the court. Went to a judge named, the head of the county council at the time was a lady named Lori Pegg. And she wasn't allowed to subpoena anybody. There were no witnesses allowed to be present. And they pretty much, the public guardian stole money from Heidi Yeoman, the resident, to pay the attorney fees, but they weren't attorney fees. It was fraud. So it was paying him to commit fraud against her. So myself and some other coalition members brought attention to it on the internet. And a lot of other people started coming forward and saying that the same judge had done the same thing or similar, very similar type things to them. And patterns started to show up, very distinct patterns, clear patterns. A clear picture started to show up about how these different judges and people and the court system in Santa Clara County were working together. We had Manoukian, this guy, Socrates Manoukian, was in Department 19, and there was another judge in Department 3. He was a probate court judge, and his name was Thomas Kane. He passed away a while ago, but he was in Department 3, and what was appearing, a lot, maybe, I think about 4 people came forward. We got about 15 different victims who say this judge cheated them, and probably about 7 or 8 more that have been, we haven't really been able to follow up with well enough to really get their stories down, especially when things are moving so fast. But it looks like Socrates Manoukian was acting as a linebacker for the probate court judge. And if there's a party in 2 courtrooms or someone who had litigation going on in both courtrooms, Manoukian would manipulate the results of the court proceedings in Department 3 so it would affect what was happening in Manoukian was manipulating Department 19 so that it would have an effect in what was happening in Department 3 to the benefit of the public guardian, the conservator, probate court judge. Still don't want to accuse the probate court judge of doing it because, I don't have all the documentation. Even though he's dead, I still want to be fair, and if I don't know something to be true, I don't want to say it, but it sure appears that they were stealing estates from people. That's what I believe. Still want to be fair, give them the benefit of the doubt, but that's what I believe. And there's a lot of other information that came forward through various different sources indicating that that's what they've been doing. They've been isolating people, making up false accusations against people, and locking people up. Old people, disabled people, people who are on conservatorships. Someone who's got criminal charges, they get habeas corpus. So I have to answer, theoretically anyway, to why someone's in custody. With things like conservatorships, they hide behind other kinds of legislation, like the Health Privacy Act, and say, "Oh, we can't tell you why they're locked up." It would violate their privacy rights and all kinds of legislation that on the surface looks really bold and good and beautiful, but there's some sneaky little they're like Trojan horses in a way. Even if the legislation went through with was created with good intent, there's people out there that sneak their little mechanisms into this legislation, and then it goes through and gets passed into law. And I'd like to try to fix the system when I can, and I think everyone should. I think that's our responsibility and as citizens, pretty much.
We were just mentioned this with we were talking with Janet Phelan, is that the goal is to go through the segments of the system that are set up to keep watch on the system. So you would file a complaint, they would look into it, and it would find out of the abuse. But turns out when the system is so corrupt that the complaint section to file is already corrupt to stop it. And in fact, when someone goes to file a complaint and bring to light problems, what happens is they let the system know of somebody who is causing trouble in their eyes. And so
Right.
what's left is to go to the public, to go outside the system, to bring this information about so that people can address it from outside the system, going back into it.
Exactly. I think the best disinfecting is sunlight, isn't it?
Yeah.
So why not shine the light on what's happening? There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing illegal about it. And I mean, it's a real mess here in Santa Clara County. It's a rat nest, and I mean, more than just a few bad apples. And the corruption is so deep and entrenched and systemic here, and people are afraid to speak out because those who do are stalked, they're harassed, threatened, intimidated, oppressed, and pretty much attacked by the sheriff's department and the county council and the judges. They just gang up on people and pretty much attack them. I mean, it's ridiculous, but it's true.
I just happen as you're talking, I'm going through and searching on the web for things related to you and cases, and on one of your publications, it brings a link to an ABC 7 News story about a woman hiding from Bay Area County. How is the we'll say the mainstream media reacting to some of these things? I mean, we see a story here, but is it rare, or is it?
We're responding is better, but the ABC News story. I can't take full credit for that, but I one of the Manukian cases. That changed history. That was beautiful. What happened there? There was a video. If anyone wants to go to YouTube and type in "Public Guardian Bruce Thurman is busted," that was one of the people who, like Miss Yeoman, she had a case going on between Department 19 and Department 3. Their son, his name was I don't want to say his name, but he's in the video. He's speaking. And he took an MP3 player into this concentration camp, is what I call it. But they call it it was Villa Fontana retirement community, and it was a terrible place where they stole her house and allegedly, you know what I mean, and property and everything she owned, and hadn't seen sunlight in a couple of years. And the video got picked up by ABC News. They're already looking at the situation. But the video is one of the things that inspired them to actually do a story on the Public Guardian. And there was another similar thing that happened right around the same time, was an FBI investigation into the probate court, where $17 million disappeared out of state funds. And right before the FBI got involved, I received very similar information, and so did other coalition members I work with. Received very similar information, but it wasn't exactly the same. What we heard was that a judge was involved, but that's not what came out in the paper. And I actually liked the people at the apartment complex. You know, saying I thought they were making some bad choices. Maybe they were misinformed, but I didn't want them to get caught up in this crazy firestorm. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I thought it would be better to just, you know, talk about it and but no, they had to just go out and attack everybody. It's a shame. So anyway, the ABC News story got quite a bit of attention, and that got picked up by a state assembly member out of Fremont, and he proposed legislation. It was AB Assembly Bill 937, which made its way all the way through the legislature, got passed into law by Governor Brown, and that was great. And what the legislation did, I don't have it in front of me, but what the legislation did was it made it so it's not so easy for them now to just isolate people like they did with the other case. The abuses that happened in the residential care facility were the deprivation of rights that occurred at the residential care facility in San Jose was very similar to the deprivation of rights, fair housing rights, fair employment and housing rights at the apartment complex. They blamed the advocate, the people who were trying to help, that try to keep the peace, bring stability. Those were the ones that were attacked. You know what I'm saying? If you question something that's happening, something illegal, something that's flat out wrong, they say you're causing a disturbance. What am I disturbing? You know, saying, am I disturbing a fight? If I break up a fight, I mean, what does that mean? You know, saying these vague little things, and then they stick it in some sort of a document, and they try to build on it and build a record, and their records are so tangled up and distorted with so many different court cases that if somebody brings attention to to it, says this is incorrect, and then a whole bunch of other cases start to come into the light, then that's what they really don't like, because what they're doing is flat out fraud. So now the AB 937 went through. It's very difficult for them to isolate people like they did. And I spent some time in jail for bringing attention to. I tried to cross-examine one of the witnesses after court, and that's what we done, was pretty much put stuff up on the internet and said this is one of the perpetrators. This is what he did, and try to cross-examine him because he said he had this sort of evidence that was never allowed to be presented. So give him a call and cross-examine him.
All right, let me stop you there so I can understand. What did they say was actionable about that? I mean, you spent time. What did you do that they charged you, picked you up, arrested you?
Well, that's the tricky thing. See, they had two different versions of the same law. Not only so I went to court, and I was in court the first day on September 16th. No, I'm sorry, September 17th of last year. I had a phone number in my hand for an outside lawyer. He's not my lawyer, but he's a friend. The sheriff deputy, who's a bailiff, stole the number from my hand. And I was taken out of the courtroom, came back the next day, and I wasn't able to call this guy who was a lawyer. And I was forced to go through another attorney, a public defender by the name of Jeffrey Dunn. And I still didn't have any idea what I was being charged with. And he said 653, Penal Code 653A2 or 2A, I forget which came first. I said, well, what's that? And he said, if you put someone's information up there that could potentially make them feel harassed, someone's personal information. I'm putting the personal information, granted, that was dumb. That was dumb of me. You know what I'm saying? But it wasn't with the intent to harass anybody. It was just going for the truth that should have been from the beginning. That was the purpose of the court hearing. So I thought I might have inadvertently violated some statute because they very well could have put something up there that could have made someone feel that way. So then I was released that evening, and I looked up the law when I got out of court, and it was very different. It had it said with the intent to put someone in fear. I'm like, wait a minute, that's not what I pled to. That's not what they told me it meant.
Right. Well, I mean, that answers my question. My question is going to be, obviously they didn't arrest you because you're a pain in their corrupt butt. I mean, they got to come up with some paperwork somewhere that, even though it's twisted and convoluted, that claims. Because if you were to look up their paperwork, they would have that statement, like you just said, that you put someone's name in public in order to intimidate them or whatever. But
right.
But you didn't. But that's what they would say.
Absolutely
so
not.
I mean, that's why I wanted to get that on.
Yeah. That's what they said. Yes, with the intent of putting someone in fear, and with no legitimate purpose. And there was absolutely no legitimate purpose, and nowhere could it even be construed. Maybe it could be remotely construed. I'll be fair, but I doubt it. I mean, but yeah, that's what the law said. But that's not the way they presented the statute to me in court. So I mean, I didn't plead to what the statute said. I pleaded to their distorted interpretation of the statute as it was presented to me.
Right. Okay. Right. Well, I didn't mean to derail you there, but I wanted to, because you see, one of the things is that I deal with people who say they call themselves sovereign citizens, right? And they claim like, well, you know, if they stop me, I would say the Constitution does this and any other thing. And I'm saying, wait, when you're dealing with corrupt police, corrupt or sheriffs or whatever, corrupt courts and judges, and toss some lawyers involved in there, I mean, you can waive all this paperwork to your blue in the face, and you're going to prison. Like you say, you had a lawyer you were going to call, and they just took the number from you and took you away. I mean, this is why
they threatened me with violence and threatened to hurt my family.
And this is why we need to to deal with. If you don't have a judicial, even with corrupt police, the judicial would be the holding their feet to the fire on it. But when you have corrupt judges, it's over. I mean, you can have honest police and a corrupt judge, and it's done. So this is why this is very important.
And the corrupt judges are the ones. I mean, the judges, period, are the ones that are supposed to make the decisions on other corrupt officials and who are they going to side with if they're corrupt too. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, right. The only ones who do get caught are the ones that, in their own little clique, step on toes. And so, like I mentioned, Rod Blagojevich, governor of Illinois, went to prison. And I'm not saying what they charged him from was wrong, but what's not why they did it to him was because the day, and I want to have an interview with him someday on this if I can manage. But the day before he was arrested, or maybe 2 days before he was arrested, he was negotiating to get a loan reworked for a company that was going under. And he said wanted the banks to renegotiate their note, and they wouldn't do it. And he threatened to take all the money, Illinois money, out of their bank, which was, I can't think of the name of the bank now, who did this, but it'll come to me. And it's a big bank. And he was threatening, and he did. And then they arrested him prior to the investigation because they were afraid of what he would do in public. But he didn't hurt anybody in his reign as governor. He did a lot of things, actually, that were positive, helped many people, individuals. But what he did do was he stepped on the people, the power players' toes. And so they found something that he did, and they nailed him. So in the case of someone who didn't do anything wrong and is stepping on their toes, they will make something up, or they will greatly abuse.
I mean, you should see the police reports. I mean, they're just ridiculous fabrications. I mean, based on little tiny bits and pieces of truth, maybe 10 or 12% of the truth, which is rearranged and manipulated, then the other 80%, 90% is all fabrications that I had no opportunity to challenge or I mean, just look at it. I mean, if a 10-year-old can look at it and see that it's fraudulent, how come the county attorneys will say, well, we can't see that? You know what I'm saying? I mean,
yeah.
I mean, come on now. It doesn't take sharp eyes to see the sun shining. You know what I'm saying? And it's beyond frustrating. It's quite this case is evolved to where it's very, very similar, remarkably similar to the other case going on in Southern California and Orange County right now, where in both cases they're working their way through the pipeline where there's motions by the public defender's office to disqualify the entire district attorney's office in both counties, both Orange County and Santa Clara County.
Yeah, I read this. A judge disqualifies all 250 prosecutors in Orange County because of widespread corruption. Now, is this a good judge doing this, or is it a bad judge keeping other guys down? I mean, I took it when I was glanced through it as it was a good thing.
I think it's a good thing. I think in my case, to the most part, it's a good thing too. I was a bit skeptical at first. I'm less skeptical now. I'm skeptical about the way it's being done, but not because it's being done. I would think it's a good thing. Both cases in both counties are because of prosecutorial misconduct, due process violations in both counties. That's why it's happening. But in Santa Clara County, unfortunately, they're being a little bit evasive about the reasons, which I can't totally blame them. They don't want to, when they see what's going on in Orange County, they probably don't want to create big waves in the legal system up here. Mm-hmm. But they're very similar, both cases. I was going to say, after I was released on, I believe it was the 18th of September, I think 18th or 17th, something like that, of last year, I published a news article about what had happened. And the news article was online. It was pretty much informing the public about how the district attorney's office had targeted me and railroaded me, and mentioned the people involved. There's the New York Times versus Sullivan Supreme Court decision where we have a right to criticize public officials, and if there wasn't anything that was untrue, I'd be happy to take it down. Anyway, it was published here. I also went to file a Marsden motion, which is an motion to withdraw my plea, because my plea was made under duress and coercion. And when I went in the Marsden motion, it kind of works like this, where an attorney is obligated to a public defender cannot suppress any evidence pertaining to your defense, and they're also legally obligated to provide competent legal representation to the client. If the attorney does not provide competent legal representation, that in and of itself is evidence pertaining to the client's defense. But how can the attorney say come in and present that? They can't. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So that's what the Marsden motion is supposed to be, where it's a motion to fire your attorney. And I went into court to fire the attorney, and I had all the proof, emails going back and forth, where his emails to me were, it was almost like the district attorney was responding to the public defender's emails. It was that bad. Had copies of them on paper, and went into the courtroom, and they changed courtrooms it seemed like the last minute, to where I was the only party in the courtroom. And I walked into the courtroom and said, "So do you still want to file the motion?" And this is Jeffrey Dunn speaking to me, public defender. And I said, "Yes, absolutely." And then right away, the two sheriff's deputies put handcuffs on me in the courtroom and took my paperwork from me right there in the courtroom, and arrested me right there. "What are you arresting me for?" "Probation violation." What are you talking about? "We don't have it yet. It's working its way through the pipeline now." And I was like, "Well, I need my..." So I had both hands cuffed behind my back. And the DA was there, and the DA went and whispered into one of the sheriff deputy's ears. And he goes, "Oh, we need to put a different address on the paperwork." See, I live in Palo Alto. I've lived in Palo Alto for years. And it's part of Santa Clara County, but it's North County. And when we're supposed to have if the alleged crime happens here and the resident lives here, is supposed to go to Palo Alto Courthouse. But Detective David Carroll, one of the cops who framed me, he put a fake address on the court paper. And wasn't the only thing that was fake. Just about everything in there was fake. But Detective David Carroll put a fake address in there. I believe the reason why he did that was to steer or railroad, if you will, the court into the case into the San Jose courts, where they'd have specific judges and people there that were waiting there for me. And I was put into jail right there. I still try to present the case. I lost my composure, and I spent, I think it was 20 days that time. Got out on early in the morning on the 5th of November, which was very interesting because that's just when the election was over, a couple hours earlier than that. And I'd filed, not a file, but a notice of intent to recall. I didn't even file it. I was preparing to get signatures. Judge Manukian, whose wife was running for re-election on the 6th District Court of Appeals. So I got out just by about 2 or 3 hours after the election was over. And I don't think that's a coincidence, whatever it means. I'm sure there's a confluence of reasons why they did this stuff to me, just as I exposed a lot of different stuff. But what they told me was, when I went back to court on the 16th, when I went back to court on Halloween, and that's when deputy was threatening to kill my family, or inside the holding cell. You got to get out there and protect them because they're going to get beaten up, and that's, that happened in one of the holding cells. I couldn't see who it was. There's another I don't want to get sidetracked, but another deputy came and looked in the window who was involved in another incident. But what they told me was a probation violation was the news article that I'd written supposedly embarrassed the district attorney.
Well, tough.
And I was like, well, I mean, I told the truth. Well, that's not the point. You're on probation now, and you can't do that kind of thing.
Oh,
wow.
wow.
Well, what about the I was like, well, what about the New York Times v. Sullivan Supreme Court decision? So then the lawyer, and his name is Thompson Sharkey, he goes, well, I know about New York. So he's saying it so the judge can hear and stuff. New York Times, but this is different because when you agreed to be on probation, you agreed to their terms. So you don't have the protection by the New York Times v. Sullivan Supreme Court decision like you did before.
I
So
see.
embarrassment is the same thing as harassment or something to that effect. And I'm like, well, no, that's not. I was like, I'm the victim here. I was railroaded. And he said, I know you were, but they want to hammer you, bro. They want to nail you to the cross, and you need to go along with their program here and get out of here. And they want to give you 60 days, but I've negotiated it down to 20. They might send you back to, they're thinking about sending you, if we don't get it resolved today, they're going to bring you back before Judge Rodney Stafford and Jeff Dunn, and they're recommending giving you 3 years. And if I was able to really when everything's moving so fast, and there's other litigants in the courtroom, and they're trying to rush everybody through, you got to take all this information at once and try to run it through. And another thing that I was trying to get with Jeff Dunn, and this is the paperwork that the sheriff's department grabbed from my hand and confiscated, that I wasn't allowed to submit to the court record. I was specifically asking him, what are the terms and conditions? I need to know. You're leaving me hanging here, and they wouldn't tell me what the terms and conditions of the probation are. And I'm like, well, it's kind of like the terms and conditions are unconstitutional and illegal, but that doesn't mean I didn't violate it. So maybe I violated an illegal or unconstitutional term or something.
Right. I think that it'd be like if you agree to parole, if you make sure that you beat up the guy down the street we want you to beat up, but if you don't do it, you violate your parole. I mean, there's
pretty much yeah, it's very close to what they're doing to me, And then when I pled guilty to the probation violation, which had nothing to do barely with what the paperwork said. I wasn't allowed to see the paperwork either. And then when I got out, I met with a probation officer. At the time, his name was Doug Davis. He wasn't a bad guy necessarily, just doing his job. But he showed me the terms and conditions for the probation. Just like when I got out the first time, I looked at what the law said. The law said very different than what they told me it meant in court. And I looked through the paperwork. There's nothing in here that says I waived my First Amendment rights or my Fifth Amendment rights, only my Fourth Amendment right to search and seizure. So what are they doing telling me that I waived my First Amendment rights when I didn't? So one of the other conditions, the conditions that they put on me when I got out was that the DA, because he was embarrassed, I needed to accept a restraining order by him. And whatever, I don't need to say his name. It's, people, even when I was in jail, it was going viral all over the internet. Why would I need to? Mm-hmm. And then they named him as a victim, like an additional victim, as if I'd done something to him, as if I had targeted him in some way. All I did was let the public know how he targeted me. I'm the victim.
There really is something wrong. Well, I've been putting up some of these pictures, with info pictures, I call them, that have been made from various people on various sites. And I've been coming across Mnookin's name, and just something wrong with a judge named Socrates being corrupt. I mean, Socrates was one of the guys who I admire for their ability to, find truth, to weed out stuff. And then here is the judge. So it's just very ironic.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with you on that.
Well, we're at this point, I mean, where do we go from here? I mean, what is waiting in front of you on this, and any peripheral items that are going forward on this, unless there's something else you needed to put in there? Well,
I'm supposed to go to court tomorrow. After I'm still not sure what. Suppose this motion has things kind of confused.
I mean, go to court for what? I mean, what did they? Why are you showing up to court? What did they tell you?
Well, from what I understand, it was originally supposed to be for the alleged probation violation because something showed up on the internet about the case, and they blamed me for it. I wasn't. I'm no one.
Did they give you a gag order?
No, they didn't. But I mean, I have no reason to even want to. I don't think about these people. There's some sheriff deputy who was married to one of the guys who submitted the false documents, and this lady's got a restraining order against me. I don't even barely know who she is, but I mean, this weird stuff is happening. I mean, I don't even think about this woman. Why would she want to do this kind of thing? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's nothing against her. She wasn't involved in the fraud. It was all her husband, and they're just doing these weird manipulative things on the paperwork. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
One thing, not to get off track, but it's very significant. The different fabrications. This guy, can't say his name. I'd love to. But his wife and Detective David Carroll, one of the fabrications in the original police report. They said that because I had supposedly shared something on Facebook, that was my understanding. I shared something that was offensive to somebody, whatever. I might have done that. I'll plead no contest, get it over with, type of thing. But anyway, so they had fabricated in the police report that because of these postings and things that I was supposedly orchestrating, maybe involved in, but, orchestrating? I mean, come on. That there was this huge crime spike that occurred at their house, and there was all these people, around their house and following them around, and this is a San Jose neighborhood, which is patrolled by the San Jose Police Department, but it's the sheriff's department writing the report, and this big crime spree that they blamed on me. If you look up San Jose Police Department's records, this stuff is public record pursuant to Government Code 6254. It didn't happen. There was not a single patrol check, nothing that substantiates these ridiculous. So not only did they
they made up a charge that you created a crime spree, but the crime spree itself didn't actually happen either.
Right, but even if it did, they couldn't blame me for it.
Right. Well, that little extra thing is the cake. Well, he created a crime spree. Yeah, but there wasn't one. Well, it's still.
Right.
Man.
Exactly. So now Detective Carroll ended up having to be taken off the case because he got so much publicity on the net, and he was replaced by another guy named Sammy Tarazzi, who's pretty much doing the same thing. With fabricating stuff, making up lies, all kinds of things. I mean, nice guy on the surface, could walk up and, hi, how are you? Polite as hell. You're under arrest,
Well, I've said this with Janet Phelan too. Now, she's been bringing up people who are judges, who are lawyers who are coming out trying to talk about corruption in the courts, and they're being censored. And it's like, right. it's their, it's the people running it tell you what laws are. I mean, it's not that there is an actual law in the book. It's the people who interpret it are making the laws. And if you're going to
interpretation, yeah.
And so if you're a lawyer, you're in their little club. They're like the president of the club, saying, "No, don't do that." And you're supposed to do it.
Right.
It doesn't matter. Step out of that club, and now you're stepping into their club, the police club, the judge club, the lawyer club, and telling them what they're doing is wrong and filing stuff on it. So in essence, it's even worse because you're not even in their club. And, so it's really very basic, I think, the reasons behind it, but it's a complete abysmal abomination to show what's going on with our system. Yeah,
exactly. The more people need to do it in Santa Clara County, there's a lot of people that are afraid to do it.
All right, so when you go to court tomorrow, when you go to court tomorrow, is it possible that you're gonna be put into jail or something?
That's what they tell me is not that probably won't happen. I mean, I've been lied to so much before, and how am I supposed to know what's going to happen? See, the motion to disqualify is supposed to be discontinued until July 31st. And that's when the motion to disqualify the district attorney's office is supposed to be heard. And supposedly they can't decide who's going to prosecute it, so they're going to move the probation hearing until after that happens. But the bizarre thing is that, then this is the difference between the Santa Clara County case and the Orange County case, is that the conflict of interest, supposedly, is that because I embarrassed the district attorney, the assistant DA, in an article, that because he's named as a victim of embarrassment, maybe, right? But because he's named as a victim, that's why they're doing it. And they're dancing around and evading the prosecutorial misconduct issues and everything. And that's got me a bit concerned, because it looks like it's almost a continuation of the fraudulent court records that they're making. And what better time to tell the truth than when the Attorney General is going to be taking it? And I really can't address the court. I got to go through my attorney to do that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, right.
And I'm going to give her some credit. I believe she wants to do the right thing. I believe she's about as honest as they come. But I believe there's some pressure in there, some influence in there from somewhere that. I mean, she's really fighting for me in some way.
Like I said, though, I mean, she's in the system, and if the system says to her, "This is you don't do this," then if she doesn't, then she's now up for trouble. You know.
Look what happened to Richard Fine. You know, in Southern California. Janet mentioned her on one of the shows. But, I mean, the DA thing isn't the only conflict of interest. See, I mentioned that Judge Lori Pegg was the judge that she was head of county council. And she was the one who originally took the whistleblower complaint. And then she moved over and became a judge. And then when she was a judge, she issued a search. I don't know if she issued it, but she was involved in the handling of a search warrant that was granted on fabrication, and then they went and illegally got evidence that they went and fabricated again, and used that to paint a bizarre, distorted story to take me into custody. You know what I'm saying? So that's conflict of interest. She should have disqualified herself right there. I mean, she shouldn't have touched it. Even if what she did do was legitimate, she shouldn't have been the one to do it. Right there is tainted. The 6th District Court of Appeals, because of the notice of intent to recall that judge, there's not one attorney or judge in anywhere within the 6th District. I think that would be Santa Clara County, San Bernardino County, Monterey County, and Santa Cruz, if I recall correctly. Those 5 counties, there's not one attorney or judge that doesn't have or wouldn't have a potential personal interest in that case, because the appellate court, where Judge Manukian's wife sits, is the one who handles all of their appeals.
Oh, great! I just bumped into him and his wife, so now they're both judges.
Yes. So she's on the 6th District Court of Appeals, and they got out of jail a couple of hours after she won the re-election.
All right. Well, let me kind of
November 5th.
Let me kind of wind it here because we got a few minutes left, and I'd like you to. What can people do to help? I mean, I've been putting up a lot of these pictures, and there's a lot of information on there of what people can do. So, watching this video on your screen in HD, you can read the resolution of it. You can copy stuff down there. But while these things are going on, what can people do to help?
Well, I would. I'd encourage people to share the hyperlink with people. Government agencies make it go viral. I'm not sure if I can encourage people, because I'm not sure if anything in there could be construed as a violation or not, the way they manipulate things. But if I could encourage people,
that's a good point.
Take that.
It's a good point. By telling people how to help, you're violating.
Yeah.
Well, what I'm doing here,
make their own decisions on that at their own discretion. Not because I'm telling them to, but I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, right.
The Attorney General's office, maybe give them a call and say, look at this case more carefully. There's a lot of people being deceptive. The San Francisco office of the State Attorney General's office is area code 415-703-5500. There's Governor Brown. He can be reached at 916-415-2841. He's not going to answer the phone, but I mean, one of the staff contacted the U.S. Attorney's Office, the Judicial Council, State Bar. Be very loud about it. Get the word out everywhere. That's basically what I would suggest if I could.
Well, I'm remiss in not mentioning this, but you are ordained reverend, and that apparently doesn't seem to give them any respect whatsoever to you.
Well, I mean, anyone can be a reverend. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It doesn't really take much. I signed up in a few minutes on the internet, but part of my ministry is to advocate for crime victims and to help people. I like to take the bad things that happen and turn them into something positive, like the state law that was passed in a sense, a seed from that video that passed, led to change in state law. The California law is now being copied over in Illinois right now. They're trying to. That's a good thing. I like to do good things like that. I like to advocate for crime victims and to bring positive results out of the bad things, and that's what my ministry is. And by attacking my ministry, they're attacking not just myself but the other victims as well. And that's my form of prayer. It's helping people. And why should I be prohibited from helping people?
And of course, you can look up Cary-Andrew Crittenden is on Facebook. All these links will be on our page, and this is being recorded to be released on YouTube. And once that all gets through, you can then take that link and share it. You can download it. I mean, I leave it totally open to people, and so that could get them. There's a lot of information being flipped on the screen here, and I will have some links to his pages in the audio archives, so we can have that up there. But we're going to have to come to an ending here, and about a minute. Anything to say as we're leaving?
Yeah, for the record, thanks so much, James. You're awesome. The case number is C1493022 in Santa Clara County Superior Court. I got a PFN number, which is a prisoner file number, in case I'm arrested again. I won't be able to speak, so I'd appreciate if other people speak if that happens. The PFN number is DRJ927. My birth date is June 14th, 1969. You can track me if I'm in custody. I'll be pretty much helpless in there. And if that happens, I'll be depending on people like you to get the word out all over the world. And please contact the people who the other news outlets who are covering the Orange County story. The LA Times, Al Jazeera, whoever's covering that story. And please ask them to cover this story as well. And I think we can make it go global. And thank you so much, James and Janet. And I appreciate you being there.
All righty. Well, we do what we can. And I can keep updates on things, but God bless what you're doing. And just keep on keeping on. You're part of the fight. And you don't know how it's going to end up you personally, but collectively things will work. So God bless, and we'll talk again.
Never surrender your conscience, you know. Thank you so much.
Feet to Fire is a production of IPS Media Works on the ONSIC radio network of stations.